Mission minded, vision focused. Gonna be. Mission minded, vision focused. I'm gonna be. Mission minded, vision focused. Gonna be. Thank you for tuning in to listen to the first episode of Creatives on Campus, where we're really going to be highlighting two major segments and building as we go, bringing in some guests who can share their own experiences as student creatives and as creative professionals. I really just want to take a few moments to just highlight very briefly what Creatives on Campus is, what it's about, and why it's so important to the work that I do as a creative practitioner. I started this segment off with just a very improv uh, song, um, just sharing this idea of mission minded, vision focused, which is the theme for 2019 for Happily Better After as a brand at large. So everything that we do within Happily Better After will always line up with the mission and will always help contribute to the greater vision of where we're going. So, mission minded vision focus is not just a theme for 2019. Essentially, it's setting the pace. So, just to share the mission, more specifically, of Creatives on Campus, um, the mission of Creatives on Campus is to foster belonging and creative community among multi level student creatives. What does that mean? It means a lot. And we'll get into it over the next several weeks of this first season of Creatives on Campus um, as a listening series. The vision of Creatives on Campus is to empower leading student creatives and professionals equally as both artists and scholars. And then just very quickly, like why? Why is this important? And I really believe that it's important because it helps us to reimagine and to really acknowledge the need for more diverse applied learning opportunities on college campuses, and not just on college campuses, but within education and within the total workforce. So I'm so excited to just really share with you and just start from the ground and just really slowly and gradually and organically build this idea of what it means to be mission minded, mission focused, and specifically how does that apply back to the work of Creatives on Campus.
There's enough creativity, hey, hey, cause I come from a dope man. I say I come from a dope man. I say we 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 come from a dope man.
So through this program, Creatives on Campus is a multi-level student program and brand established for student creatives and creative professionals. Um, because I recognize that those are essentially new terms or terms that we are cultivating and grafting, specifically that I'm cultivating and grafting as a part of a larger research, um, it's really important to define those terms. And so, what we will do throughout this is kind of give definition to these terms that you're going to be hearing so that as you continue to hear them, you'll know exactly what we mean by student creative and creative professional. Additionally, the program acknowledges the changing demand within student needs, who beyond being students more commonly identify as brand leaders, entrepreneurs, and cultural influencers. So I think we all can see and we can all recognize that over the years, through social media, through this digital, technological, innovative, self-help, um, you know, information age that we live in, there's so much content and creativity that has been really put in front of us that's caused a change in the mindsets and a change in the ways that, um, let's just start with millennials. They're an easy population to start with, easy generational population to start with, that has transformed the way that we, as a millennial myself, have perceived ourselves in the workforce, have perceived ourselves as a part of our communities, and even really starting to take ownership of the information that's in front of us, seeing how it applies to our own lives, to our own selves, and to our own gifts. And so you now see a lot more people starting brands, becoming entrepreneurs, and really holding these strong uh, value systems about themselves that speaks to the fact that they, more than ever, and more than ever before that I've seen in my life, believe in the power of their gifts and believe in the power of their contributions to a larger society. And so, how has that and how will that continue to change how we do business in the workforce? How will these new trends within millennials and within the way that they, um, value themselves, how will that impact even the way higher education and education at large has to do business? That's really what my scope of research looks at. As a creative, I must give explanation of content, of music concepts, and any other creative wording. Information must be passed on in context so that we do not become contributors to an already chaotic, misunderstood society. It's asked to not correct one who misunderstood you say, I hear, instead of your intended message of I am here. Words. They are the teachers to whom we surrender influence over our children. So these messages must be clear, since for some, music will be the highest level of education to which they willingly adhere. So, again, going back to Creatives on Campus, through an array of curated projects, rising and seasoned student creatives gather in person and online as we continue to work on this mobile app to participate in dynamic programming opportunities developed within graduate student learning communities. And so it's important to say that we start at the graduate student level because they're at the top of the education tier. Why is that important? It's important because we're not just looking to create programming. We're not just looking to create a cool space for our brand leaders and for our creatives to go to work, but we're really looking to build a mentorship program that is impacting every level of education. And so that starts with the top tier, graduate students. If we can train up a really strong and solid group of graduate students who are already, in college or who have recently graduated from college and who have research in front of them on an everyday basis, and can take that research and bring it into a community, into a lab where it can be used and applied back to their own individual brands, for a greater good, a greater cause, a collective good, a collective cause. I think that's really powerful. And I'm not just saying it because it's my own idea. I really believe that it's a powerful approach that creates this, again, this multi tiered system of mentorship where we can now empower the undergraduate students to do similar, and at each level continue to empower um, each level of education in a way that helps them to see how their gifts can be at work and how there is even room and space, and even where there is not, how space can be created for one's gifts. So, graduate students are given space within these communities to lead in various projects, curations, and conversations, pairing their own brand segments with their program research and course content. So, I kind of prematurely talked about that, how this space will give them the opportunity to take their own research, apply it in a way that is meaningful. And what is meaningful? Meaningful is what's meaningful to me, right? Meaningful to me as a brand owner is what it is I'm already working on, what it is I already believe in. And how can I take that and again contribute it back to a greater project or a greater good as a collective. And so let's talk about this collective. Students also partner with a collective known as Millennials Creatively Engaged, BSM. And those three letters, BSM, we're not talking about a Bachelor of Science in, management, or, we're not talking those types of letters. BSM stands for Beyond Social Media. So this collective of millennial-led brand leaders share in common the call to make tangible impact through a balanced engagement of art, education, and storytelling. And although, yes, we value higher education, obviously, right? That's being acknowledged. The network is united by credentials that matter. What are credentials that matter? That BSM, those are the credentials. But we're not talking college degrees. We're talking the kind that goes beyond social media, the kind that is impactful, the kind that makes real life tangible impact. And so we love social media. We love this digital age. We're a product of it in some ways, but that is not the extent of our work, and it never will be. No matter how much technology comes and goes, it does not take away ever from the need for human connection, the need to come from behind the computer and to really engage in important conversations, dialogues, and more importantly, to then take that to another level of saying, how can we now put this to work? These learning communities are a solution. They're not the solution, but they are a solution. We've been coming together in many different ways within this generation and having conversation and really coming to the table, creating our own red table, as we've seen people like Jada Pickett even do. Something that's just catching hold like wildfire, where people are really tuned in because they want real conversations. They want to be engaged in ways that are meaningful and that are relevant, but also that help to cultivate and produce growth. Okay, if we see that's a thing, that's beautiful. But now that we've had these conversations, we need space to be able to go to work. And so these learning communities, again, really create the space, not just for learning, but going back. And even I think about my own educational experience. My first master's degree was in higher education, teaching and learning. What does that mean? It means that even as an educator, it's not enough for me to just show up every day and teach. There's an obligation in teaching that I'm always learning because the world is always changing. So as culture changes, I have to constantly be abreast on how those changes are impacting what it is I'm teaching so that I can come back and teach thoughtfully, teach in a way that takes into account the greater picture of what is now, not what was, but what is. And not just what is, but what will be. So based on what I'm seeing, how can I project out how that is going to transform the future? And how can I use that to even start to impact the approaches that I use? And so Creatives on Campus is really a future forward thinking program. If we see more students, more professionals are taking this entrepreneurial approach, if we see the way culturally the world is changing and it's causing people to care more, right? Where they take up a cause and they put a brand name behind it, and then they start building projects and curations and hosting gatherings and hosting live music events and whatever way that they take to these issues. How can we use that to the benefit of a greater good within education? Why education? Because that just so happens to be my field. And so there's so much room and so much space because there's so many industries that if we start cultivating creatives in these intentional ways, it really will create platforms and even more ideas that I'm not even thinking about because I'm just one person, but it will create more avenues of entrepreneurship that is not just creative. Because again, I love the creative community and I love all of the wonderful things that we bring to the table on an imaginative level. But how effective are you if all you have is imagination? One of the terms that was used in some research that I was presented with through class, is this idea of content and process, right? So we have content, we have the what, which is, oftentimes driven through our imagination and our creative processes. And that's beautiful. But what about the process part? What about the process piece? What about the how, right? And oftentimes, that takes strategic planning, strategic thinking, strategic implementation. And that comes, you can reinvent the wheel, right? You can map out all these wonderful processes, or you can rely on the research, the data, the information, the education that is already available, right? And so that is the power of these learning communities, is where we say we already have the research because it's the reason we're in college. It's the reason we're here. Now, how can we use that that process piece and link it back to this content piece, which is our imagination, which is our brand, which is the creativity that we are constantly pushing out on social media? How can we link the two and now create, um, new opportunities to achieve um, multiple initiatives, right? So they may be the initiatives of the universities for which we build these learning communities in, or they may be initiatives that we care about as a collective, or they may be initiatives that maybe these communities are they're partnering now with other organizations who say, hey, let's pull in the Creatives on Campus crew because we love what they're doing, and we have some problems that we would like to solve. And maybe if we can link up and you bring the content and we bring the process, or maybe you bring the content and the process and we'll just give you the strategic initiatives that we want you to apply them to. I just think it's this beautiful chain reaction of collaboration, partnership, and really just understanding that there is a value exchange here. I think there's a lot of grievances that this generation has with the former, and it's because we don't have space to do what we feel like we've been called to do. And we're aware of our gifts. That's the difference. We can't just pretend like we're not aware of what we're good at, or what we do well, or what we thrive in, or what gives us life. Even if we want to talk about this on a mental health and a health and wellness perspective, these communities are beneficial to our well-being. When I don't have space to create, I'm going to go find other ways to cope, right? I've already done that in my life. I found uh, just really negative ways to cope that have led to different addictions and different things that I openly have talked about and will continue to talk about. Um, but why go down that path when I can just bring what I have to the table, create the space for it, bring the like minds together who can also contribute their own, creative pieces and do meaningful work, do powerful work. I mean, I just think there's so much here. And even in this conversation, there's a lot to unpack and there's a lot to talk about and there's a lot to reflect on. But um, all I can say is that I'm excited, and that, when we think about our mission, which was really the purpose of this episode, is to talk about, our mission to foster belonging, creative community. Again, we could think about that in so many ways. We could think about that from a health and wellness standpoint. We could think about it from just the creative aspect of it. We could think about it in terms of just community alone and the importance of having space to come together and to reflect. We had a whole course called Action Research where we really dive into learning communities and the importance of having space to collaborate, to test, to experiment, to make mistakes, to paint outside the lines, to exchange ideas that seem very left field, but may in fact be, you know, the cusp of something transformative. Who knows? There's nothing off limits when it comes to creativity. And doing this among multi level student creatives. That's the second part of the vision. So, this is not just about impacting higher education, this is about equipping those at the higher education level. If you guys are supposed to be the experts, if you're the doctors, if you're the master of these things, if you're the bachelors of these things, you should in fact reflect expert level knowledge and expert level, you know, even in terms of excellence, right? Being able to do things skillfully. uh, there's a term I love to use from positive psychology, flow, right? They talk about what do you do with in this level of flow where it's seamless, where you don't even think about it. It's just like this built-in tacit knowledge of doing and being. And for me, I think on my own gifts, and that's singing, right? That's songwriting. That's um, more so now speaking. That's um, connecting. These are things that I love to do, and they're things that I do well. And so, how can I create more space and more opportunities to flow? And that's what this is about. This is about many things. I'll say that's what this is about, and then I'll give you 20 more reasons of what it's about. But that's the thing, it just applies in so many different ways. Um, and so that's the mission, and everything that happens will be to foster belonging and creative community among multi-level student creatives. And there's many phases to that. So there will be phases. It starts with, some conversations. It starts with some simple event planning and some small gatherings. It starts with even identifying where are the creative communities on a national level, on a citywide level. Where do these communities exist? Within New Jersey, I'm not sure, and that's where I live. Um, Aside from the creative community that I'm seeking to foster within our own network, that Millennials Creatively Engaged network that I told you about, I'm not really sure where the creative communities exist. I've heard of some um, trying to formulate and start, but I haven't really seen um, it happen in a very impactful way yet. And it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it just means that I'm still searching it out. In Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, I've recently come in contact with some different groups that I'm aware of: Rec Philly, Taste Creators, Global Village. These are just a few. WeWork is a big space that is evolving on a global level. These are creative spaces and communities that are um, really happening in a way that I think is just, it's mind blowing. And again, going back to being a visionary, you think about how is that going to impact the future? How is that going to impact the future of higher education? If I can graduate high school and come and join a community where I can thrive as an artist, have a team of people essentially around me who is pushing me, who is giving me education, who's giving me, programming that I think is super dope, who's giving me the space to create, who's even hooking me up with spaces to do photo shoots and to have PR and all these things that we used to think was the record label industry's job, or the industry job. These are now resources that we are giving people on local levels. How is that going to impact whether or not I care about going to get a college degree or not? Especially if that college degree is going to require me to take out student loans, which is going to require me to go into student debt, which is going to contribute to this $1 trillion crisis that we already see and perceive as a terrible thing. I don't know. I really don't know, but it's a lot to think about. And my I will say that my approach to the conversation about creatives on campus is this: higher education they have two options. They can act on the research that they have today, and continue to, refocus their attention to these graduate learning, adult learning populations, seeing that more students are coming back to college as professional learners, as adult learners, because they see the need to compete, or maybe their organizations are causing for them to have to compete with these higher level of degrees, right? So a job that you used to only need a bachelor's for, maybe now you need a master's for, or a job that you only needed a certification for. Like, I know even in the nursing industry, this is changing, where you could go and get an RN licensure and not have the BSN behind it. And now there are organizations, hospitals, who are saying, no, you need to have this BSN. And so how organizations are changing and the workforce is changing is causing more people to go back into higher education and pursue programs and degrees even as adults. And so a lot of higher education institutions are focusing their efforts on those populations of students. But even those students, that strategy is only going to work for so long, because again, as culture changes, as things change, as people change, trends change. And so I really believe creative community is the future. I think it's the future of every industry. And really partnering with creatives, creative talent, brands, entrepreneurs, to do things in unconventional ways that never go out of style. Because as a creative, you're always creating. So there is no shuffling trying to keep up, because we're always ahead. It just is what it is. And it's not an arrogant statement. It's not any of those things. It's really just the recognition and the confidence and the awareness of the power of your gift. And when that gift is paired with education, how much more powerful is it? So I think that's it for this initial conversation. I know there was a lot said, but I hope that there was something said that helps you to see and understand really the power behind this program, and what it's about, why we're doing it, and really to gain your support. If you have heard something and you're like, wow, I really need to be a part of this. Wow, I really love this. And I just want to contribute to continue to help them continue in the work that they're doing. You want to make a donation. If you want to partner, if you want to consider our Millennials Creatively Engaged Network, if you are a brand or an entrepreneur, there's so many ways to get connected and be involved. Please consider us for monetary support and donations. They can be made in so many different ways, but the easiest way is right on our site, happilybetter.com/creatives. That's plural. www.happilybetter.com/creatives is how you can make a donation, get connected, even see about becoming a millennial creatively engaged. Or if you have a student, if you know a student who just needs to get connected and who needs the space to create for their own personal well-being. They need the space to create, but they also need to, continue to thrive on a scholarly level as a student. Please connect them. And until next time, I encourage you to really think about your own mission. What is your mission? What is your mission as an individual? If you are a brand, then you may have already established one. If you're an entrepreneur, you may have a brand for your business, but what is your personal brand mission for yourself and for who you are? You might even have a mission for your family. As a family, this is what we're on a mission to do, and this is the vision of what we anticipate that will look like, or what our end goal is. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to know who you are and to know where you're going.
Oh, in the life of a child, so it's a job to be sure that the children are sure of the things that they've learned and grown up believing. It's a job to be sure the children are sure of the things they've learned and grown up believing. gifts that you can buy.